Muted. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our global news recap. My name is Olga, known as Onest Press across the socials. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we're going to discuss some national news, some global news, and then I will lead you to our daily news recap in the form of a newsletter with a bunch of other global news, because otherwise we would be sitting here for a few hours, and I want you to spend some time reading it on your own whenever you find time for it. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, Lynn. Thank you. Hi. And thank you so much for sharing the link to this YouTube on Blue Sky. I just saw it. Thank you so much. Hi, Jared. Welcome, everybody. How are you doing? I hope you're safe. New York is very rainy and humid today, and sweating is included into this broadcast today. Herewith. So let's start with the situation is not good in Washington, D.C., but we're going to start with something more upbeat and sarcastic, if you will. I think we're so desperate for sources of information, but also laughter and some type of, coverage that would make us giggle, if anything. And sorry for New York sounds. This is, we used to it here. So unfortunately, it will be part of our live stream today as well. So first things first, of course, Trump is trying to, as he says, cleanse DC from all kinds of, criminal activities that are apparently turning Washington, D.C. in some shithole extraordinaire, which is completely not true, right? If we were to fact check it, indeed, the crime is at the lowest since 26 years. It went down by 30%. So all of this is unprovoked. All of this is artificial. And all of this is a sort of a preview of a national emergency and sort of, state of emergency and war and whatnot, allowing Trump to close the borders and pretty much harass the citizens on a federal level. Now, he sent more National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. Now, here comes the upbeat part, or the giggle part that I promised you. Today, he sent Secretary of Defense Hegseth, Stephen Miller, and J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, to thank those troops. And those troops were gathered for this photo op at the Shake Shack in Washington, D.C.'s Union Station. And so this is supposed to be something extracurricular and, some PR stunt where people would be applauding those big leaders who saved DC from crime and, this miserable living, so to speak. But because all of that is a lie, they also got such treatment. Certainly, Epstein files are not to be disclosed. Today, another judge ruled that now the testimonies are not going to be published either. So people are getting pissed. Now, people in Washington, D.C., and maybe you are from there, so comment, let us know how you. Hi, Ricardo. Hello. If I disappear, I always will come back, okay? Unless we said bye-bye until tomorrow, all right? So let's stay patient. For whatever reason that was going on. And I'm back. Okay. So J.D. Vance was welcomed in this way. Okay, I'm back. Let's see the video. Now I'm really back. What's really funny here is that I have no issues with internet. It's fully here. All the other websites working, phone working, everything is working. But when I go live and I talk about something weird, or something in particular, I start disappearing. So please be patient with me here, and I thank you for being here. Hi, welcome back. Hey, Steffi Lynn. Oh, I love it. Hi, hello. Thank you for watching. Okay, so JD Vance and Hexeth and Miller received the treatment they deserve. Period. End of story. Here's the video.
Oh, look. It's Couch Fucker. You gonna fuck a couch, buddy?
Right here. Do not go past
this. This is Vice President David Go fuck the couch. Go fuck the couch, JD Vance. Go fuck the couch.
Kudos to that gentleman. I mean, I can feel all types of feels, but I would never dare to shout such things. So kudos to this, patriot who was pretty much summarizing every single thing that JD Vance supposed to hear lately from the crowd. Yes, right? And about the couch comment. Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's something. And of course, JD Vance delivered a speech. Hi, Paula. Hello. Yes, laughing out loud. Me too. And so he started delivering a speech where he pretty much says, well, you're busting your behinds for us, speaking to the National Guard that just arrived here from random states whose governors are going along with this lie, by the White House. He's thanking them and says, you're busting your behinds, and all we give you is a burger, which is, all of it is untrue. The National Guard is not needed there to begin with. Second, they're paid for it. Third, watch the video. Here's JD Vance.
Hey guys, Eddie, here's the deal. Come here. So, we decided to bring the Secretary of Defense and Stephen Miller to bring you guys back over. And we appreciate everything that you're doing. So, you guys bust your ass all day, we give you a hamburger. Not a fair trade, but we're grateful for everything you guys do.
And he continued speaking and speaking and speaking. And Paula, glad you're feeling so much. Thank you. I'm glad too. This was a knockout last week. Oh, 1 week in bed. This was new. But I kept working, but of course, couldn't be on camera. Now, next to deliver the big speech was Stephen Miller. And he started talking about communism. Don't get your hopes up. He talked about communism that is sort of imposed by the liberals that are unwilling to protect Black people. Watch it.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you to the Vice President for bringing us here today. Thank you, Secretary, for your leadership. And most importantly, thank you to the men and women of the National Guard. I think here's the most important point. There are residents who lived in Washington, D.C. their entire lives. Their parents lived here. Their grandparents lived here, and they have lived for generations in intolerable conditions of crime and decay. There are parts of the city, I moved to the city 20 years ago. There are places where I've seen graffiti that has been untouched for 2 decades. There are homeless encampments that have made it impossible for families to use public parks and public recreation for as long as I've lived here. There are hundreds of residents of this city who are shot in street violence every single year, making it one of the most violent cities on planet Earth. And for too long, 99% of this city has been terrorized by 1% of the city. And the voices that you hear out there, those crazy communists, they have no roots, they have no connections to the city, they have no families they are raising in this city, they have no one that they are sending to school in this city, they have no jobs in this city.
The communists waited for all these speeches to be done with, to then, give Vance and Miller and Hexeth an appropriate bye-bye. Take a look.
I heard you, buddy. This is the guy who thinks people don't deserve law and order in their own community.
Mr. Vice President, how did it go?
Guys, thank you.
How did it go? How do you think it went? It went very well. This, most likely, all the videos on on mainstream media will be silenced and maybe replaced by applause or, I don't know, giggles. But maybe it's the wrong time to announce that. But Elon Musk is not really known for best timing. He decided to, check this out, postpone his plans to create the third party. I mean, knowingly, it was bogus and nonsense to expect him, from all the people, to create the third party. Not because he lacks money or finances. He has enough to do so many good things, but he is known for misusing it for all the bad things. And so he's deciding to put the pause on his third party that would have never worked to begin with, and to back up JD Vance in his now alleged run for president in 2028. So this was announced today by Wall Street Journal. They presented all sorts of receipts, how this is now put in motion. Of course, Elon Musk went back on his Twitter shitter and said that, well, anything that Wall Street Journal reports cannot be seen as truth, and all of that is made up. Although we know that whenever they say something, whether it is Elon Musk or the White House or Kremlin or Beijing, you always have to flip it 180 to see what's actually true. So, remains to be seen. Now, as to the White House now presents several ideas that certainly reveal their brightness, and they're certainly not so bright. So one of those big ideas is where Trump declared that from now on he wants a stake in businesses. And the Speaker of the White House, Carolyn Leavitt, was asked to comment on it yesterday in the press briefing. I will save you the visual and the video because I feel you, I'm with you. Quote, she says, "It's a creative idea that has never been done before. And maybe it's the problem that we do have a Speaker of the White House that is just in her early 20s. Or maybe the problem is that she lacks knowledge or interest to gather information and present it truthfully. But in fact, China, Russia, North Korea are very much known for owning a stake of companies. And to quote Stephen Miller, communism." Now, this is actually communism, not screaming at the elected officials that are known for certain, things and not disclosing certain things like Epstein files. That has nothing to do with communism, rather freedom of speech and democracy itself, right? Demos kratos, the voice of the people. Now, here, this is communism. And the point of owning a stake of an independent private entity, which a company like Intel would be, is a hallmark of communism. It's really something that they're known for. So it's very ironic. And the comments are already coming from Europe and Asia, laughing out loud to this, bright new idea, as Leavitt, labeled it as. Now, second big idea is that Trump orders the border wall that we have with Mexico, to be painted in black color. And why, you would think? He says, well, because dark colors, black colors, are attracting heat. And so the wall will be so hot that the immigrants, those who want to come here legally, will have an issue climbing it because it will be so hot, I bet that at night they think it will be invisible because it's black, like any black cat. And I mean, reportedly, and we know statistically, if this stuff occurs, it happens during the night when the sun is not really warming up the wall, But naturally, the fascist Barbie personified organized a press conference right by the border wall to explain this bright idea of the hot wall that should be, very unattractive to all immigrants seeking entrance to the United States illegally. Take a look.
Today, we are also going to be painting it black. That is specifically at the request of the president, who understands that in the hot temperatures down here, when something is painted black, it gets even warmer, and it will make it even harder for people to climb. So we are going to be painting the entire southern border wall black to make sure that we encourage individuals to not come into our country illegally, to not break our federal laws, but that they will abide and come to our country the right way so that they can stay and have the opportunity to become United States citizens and pursue the American dream.
American dream. Those were the times when we pursued the American dream. Third bright idea, as I promised you, 3 ideas, right? So Trump is aiming to end stupidity. Don't hold your breath. By banning solar power. Here's a tweet. I'll save you the videos. So here's a tweet that came out today. Any state that has built and relied on windmills and solar power are seeing record-breaking increases in electricity and energy costs. The scam of the century. We will not approve wind or farmer destroying solar. The days of stupidity are over in the USA. Mega. Now we go into mega stupidity. Fact check. Solar panels can reduce or even eliminate reliance on traditional power grids, leading to major savings on energy bills depending on system size, usage, and location. Well, oh, we actually have 4th bright idea. Sorry, I promised you 3. I over-delivered, or Trump did. Today, he shared his bright knowledge about Ukraine, specifically about Crimea. As we know, Crimea is Ukraine. Crimea has been stolen by the Russians in 2014 by sending those green people into Crimea that seized control over federal buildings and municipal buildings, and then did this fake referendum and gave everybody Russian passports. Okay, so Trump is saying today, quote, Crimea is massive. I would say like the size of Texas or something, in the middle of the ocean. If you're familiar with geography or a map, first of all, Ukraine has nothing to do with an ocean. It's Crimea is a half island, and it is in the Black Sea. But, now, if you were to consider numbers and compare Ukraine to Texas, Crimea to Texas, Crimea is less than 4% the size of Texas, and it is obviously on the Black Sea. Now, if you were to compare Ukraine to Texas, Ukraine itself is smaller than Texas, which is 233,062 square miles. And Texas, to compare, is 268,597 square miles. So if you were to compare, it would be Ukraine and Texas, and not definitely not Crimea and Texas. What does he think Ukraine is? How big is that? In other news, Trump wants to go to heaven, and it is connected to Ukraine. He says, I want to try and get to heaven. If I can get to heaven, this will be one of the reasons to save Ukraine. So all of that is now connected to Ukraine. He is shooting over the Nobel Peace Prize. He's going straight to heaven. If somebody explained it to him that there will be virgins waiting, I don't think that is his religion. But whatever the motivation is. Then the White House spread rumors this morning. And it began, together aligned with the news cycle in Europe. So it came out in the middle of the night, very, very early in the morning, where the White House said that Putin would be meeting Zelensky and possibly Trump in Budapest. Of course, entire Europe started reacting to the Budapest Memorandum deja vu, right? Because it's like 1994. Those were the agreements ensuring Ukraine would remain sovereign, right? As a territory, as a country, also as a nation itself, with traditions and language and culture and religion and whatnot, right? And so now that would be the new Budapest, blah, 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 right? We were still asleep at that point, even the East Coast. Once we woke up, it was proven this was just a rumor. Why? Because the Kremlin started speaking. And Kremlin loves aligning their news cycle with our morning in the United States, if you think about the Eastern time. Because in Moscow, I mean, they're what, 7, 8 hours ahead, at least the Moscow part. Russia has 11 time zones, but their nightly programming is the main propaganda programming. Because if you are familiar with the Russian, lifestyle, you go home, you watch news all night, you watch political programming. You don't really watch the movies. Like I grew up in Germany, 8:15. If you are from Germany, 2015 or 8:15 at night, you watch movies. That's when the movies come up. Of course, everything has changed since the internet, Netflix, and whatnot. But in Russian speaking, population, watching the news overnight, watching political programming is the key. The big thing was when they created, the Idol, right? And people would watch music and concerts. This was like a special thing. You watch politics. And so the propaganda programming with all the juicy made up crap is always premiering at night, which coincides with our morning news. And so that's where the foreign ministry of Russia started issuing statements. Specifically, Lavrov, horseface, gave an interview where he starts talking about security guarantees, right? The security guarantees, as I explained it to you yesterday, which are the key of the issue to sell this, peace agreement, whatever, with Russia by ceding territories to Russia, because there will be that security guarantees, right? And Putin allegedly, agreed, as Trump told us, and as Trump, most importantly, told European leaders and Zelensky himself. And so Lavrov starts speaking, and he says, no, there will be no discussion of security guarantees without Russia at the table. Then he starts this lengthy explanation as to what do they see as possible security guarantees that could be offered to Ukraine. And he alleges that Trump did agree to that. Now, this is just, he is our only source at this point. So, we know whatever they say, it's a lie anyway. But White House lies too, so who knows? Anyway, so he says, look, let's just, we assume we will use Minsk agreement that failed because Boris Johnson persuaded at that point Ukraine not to agree to it and to continue fighting, rightfully so. One thing he did correct. Now, the Minsk agreement was based on UN Security Council that has Russia and China and, whatnot as permanent members with veto power, that the UN Security Council would be the guarantee for safety and security. And so if Ukrainian land at that point would be again invaded, all they would do is gather the Security Council members, and they would need to decide on one action to take. And in that decision, Russia could veto any action. China could veto any action as well. So, I mean, you can't ask the rapist to provide security guarantees to the victim. I mean, it just reminds me of these horrific stories, when you hear that police, there was like police in somebody's apartment because somebody was beating up somebody else. And then police was assured that everything is fine. They left, and then it ended the way it was horrible. I mean, it was horrible, but predictable, right? That's what it reminds me on those horrific stories that usually have a very sad ending. And Lavrov goes even further to say that, well, we offered this as a sort of a deal to Trump because he will then spend nothing on it, right? He can be a little involved in security guarantees just by voting as part of UN Security Council, or just step out and let Russia provide the security guarantees. Most importantly, Lavrov says there will be no foreign boot on the ground in Ukraine, right? No France, no Germany, nothing. They can be the folks guaranteeing the peace only on paper by attending that meeting, if needed, at the UN Security Council in New York or Geneva or wherever they decide to meet at. Then CNN confirms that Kremlin stated, quote, Putin will not be meeting with Zelensky, not now, not in the near future, which ends the entire purpose of discussion with European leaders. And of course, European leaders who were sort of bamboozled into sitting at the White House, praising their dear leader, sitting there listening as if they were gathered for a lesson, while he was rumbling and tumbling about saving the world, Nobel Peace Prize, going to heaven, whatever. So now they start coming out of woodworks. Chancellor Merz says, I told you already yesterday, he says, I don't believe in meeting between Zelensky and Putin. Putin doesn't see Ukraine as a sovereign country. He's not respecting Zelensky either. Macron says, hey guys, but what about sanctions? I mean, it's nice, it's all hoopla, and we discuss peace and security guarantees, but time is ticking. Let's impose some sanctions. 19th package by European Union. Let's unfreeze those, and you guys discussed it yesterday in the comments, rightfully so, Russian assets. Let's use it to send it to Ukraine, to buy equipment for Ukraine as well. Let's use the time. And of course, Russia has to find a clown that would begin speaking against France. I mean, Putin can't start talking badly about Macron. This is not the part for him. Lavrov, either. Who would be that person to do it? And then they think, Medvedev, right? The former president, alcoholic, can post some things. People can dismiss it as just the side of alcoholism. And others would just, okay, but Kremlin did allow him to post it and it's still up, so it might be real. So let's go at this type of confusion. And so Medvedev posts, the brainwashed Gallic rooster, and he's referring to France, still dreams of sending troops to Ukraine, though it's clear NATO forces won't be there. Yet this hoarse bird, Macron, keeps crowing to prove he is the king of the chicken farm. Chicken farm being the EU and EU leaders that showed up at the White House. So all of this is BS. Then the Finnish president stopped. Finland, that shares the longest European border with Russia. He went on, he gave an interview, and he made it as reliable as possible for American audiences. And so I have the video, it's just 31 seconds long. Let's watch.
I guess for an American audience, and having studied in the US for many years, the best way to explain it is that if you take the relative landmass of what Russia wants right now from Ukraine, it would be a little bit like you giving up Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, even Virginia, and then bumping into Maryland. So in that sense, we're talking about a substantive amount of territory.
Does President...
So, and Lynn says, yeah, that's a deal breaker. Indeed. And so also what happens today is Poland is waking up to an explosion. And obviously they rush to investigate. They can't blame a bunch of everybody. I mean, but they're very close to Russia. So first thought, by the end of the day, proves to be correct. This was a Russian Shahed drone on the way to Ukraine that fell in Poland in a cornfield. And so by the end of the day, it was like all this, some people said maybe it's a Ukrainian drone. Others said maybe it's from Belarus. Altogether, it was not from Ukraine, not from Belarus. Warsaw confirmed that the drone, which crashed and exploded on Polish soil earlier today, was Russian. It violated NATO airspace. It detonated inside Poland, causing damage. And Moscow did this during supposed peace talks, right? As what we're having here, allegedly. Poland's foreign ministry called it a deliberate provocation and issued a formal protest to NATO allies. But this is not an accident. This is a provocation. And this is Putin showing the NATO members how effective is this Article 5. And I told you yesterday, Article 5 is not automatic. It has 3 steps. First, all members have to vote, and nobody would need to use or veto, not to decide to use veto against it. that there was an attack on an ally or a member of NATO. Second, we see that a response is necessary. And third, on the response itself. They have to agree on all those 3 points for an action to occur. And here Putin is telling you, okay, now I send a drone to Poland. It crashed there. Nothing will happen. There were several planes violating NATO airspace and Poland's airspace and Lithuania's airspace several times, right? In Baltics itself, nothing happened. So what needs to happen for you to grab yourself by a pair, speaking to NATO, to have any type of action, to issue a statement, to even say, no, 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 Russia. Now think about Turkey. You can think anything you want about Erdogan, but when Russians try to violate their airspace, over flying from Crimea over the Black Sea, Erdogan first said, warning, one and only warning. Second time they tried it, he shot the plane. Nobody's trying to do it anymore. Turkey is also part of NATO. But this part, the eastern part, is never defending itself. And so Putin, yes, he's provoking it, and he will continue provoking until there is at least a clear answer. I'm not saying you need to bomb anybody, but at least recognize it as a violation. Now, remember India? Remember India playing this weird role as to Trump will impose secondary sanctions on Indian products because India is buying crude oil from Russia. And then Modi said, we're postponing our purchases from Russia until we have, some type of a deal with Trump. No deal was achieved. And so today we also hear the news that Bloomberg reports that Indian state-owned firms, Indian Oil and Bharat Petroleum, resumed buying Russian crude oil from Ural. And so the purchases are already prepaid for September through October, and deliveries are on the way to India after Russia increased discounts from $1 to $2.5 per barrel. Since the war began, India's imports of Russian oil have surged from, check this out, 1% to 42%. And compare it to Chinese purchases. Throughout the war, they went up only from 13% to 16%. So just 3% difference. Meanwhile, with India, it's 41%. So when we think about who sponsors the war, India does quite a share. Also, so does European Union, and they just, posted a purchase for Russian oil, for the upcoming month itself. Lynn says Trump doesn't scare India. No, it doesn't. And Modi is very skilled in, as much as Erdogan, for playing both sides well, right? And if you're very nice, you can then use both sides for your advantage, right? Both NATO and EU for Turkey. And then for India, of course, BRICS altogether. I in BRICS is India. So having good relation with China and Russia, but also being very cozy with the United States, because we are a huge market. Plus, they also are very reliable on us to school and educate their professionals, right? The H-1B visas, the student visas, play a huge role in this regard. And our Silicon Valley is profiting off of it as well. Hi, Jules. Thank you for reposting the stream. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Okay. And so, pre-last thing that I want to talk about here before I let you go. U.S. Navy is working on drone production. Of course, as we know, the war in Ukraine is a drone war, essentially. Russians are complaining that for months they are at the front lines and they haven't seen any single Ukrainian, but they have died and they're essentially fighting drones. And so died in the fight with drones. And there was this whole report today where Russian state media sent mothers of the soldiers who died to some, graveyard with flags and everything, and the mothers and sisters and wives were crying how many people died, and those are the best ones, whatever. And sort of it didn't go the way propaganda media wanted it to go, but it was live, and so they couldn't, kind of, they had to scramble and figure out what's happening. And one of those mothers said, it's a drone war. My nephew is currently the front lines, and he said, I haven't seen a single Ukrainian for months, but I see their drones, and they see me, but I can't see them. So it's a drone war. And of course, logically, US Navy is working on enhancing our abilities, especially when it comes to fighting China potentially. So US Navy is developing a fleet of autonomous maritime drones to counter China. Inspired by Ukraine's low-cost naval drones, the US is aiming for swarms of fully autonomous boats, but at a price tag of million each. Now, if you were to compare it to Ukrainian drones, those are 250,000 each. These are boats, so to speak, boat drones or whatever, and they cost 1 million each. And the tests have been shaky. First drone broke down, another collided and sank off California. A separate test saw a drone capsize a tugboat, tossing the captain overboard. The failures were traced to software malfunction, but also human errors. So this is a big operation that is happening, on the coast of California, off the coast of California. And we'll see what the progress will be ultimately. Putin can't hide a million deaths. Indeed, right? And this is the million deaths because we have the track record of deaths throughout the war, the official invasion, right? That started in 2022. But if you think from 2014, he used 1 million people just to conquer Donbass, which he cannot conquer and get. So he's using Trump to get this area through this peace agreement. So it's way beyond 1 million people if you consider the entire war, right? Trump marks everything up 75%, right? And thank you for mentioning that. Also, Besant gave an interview today, and he said, oh, this is so wonderful. We're selling our military equipment to European Union, and Europeans are paying for it, and then they give this to Ukraine. And by the way, we also always added 10% markup, so much to being an ally within NATO, pushing everybody to spend up to 5% GDP on military equipment, then adding a markup to it. So, Jules refined, Ukraine is going to be the most sophisticated forces on the planet. Thank you. And I think, thank you for your comment. And I think it's very close to it right now. But also the war in Ukraine helped tremendously to enhance US capabilities, right? If you think about the Patriot systems and all that, yes, it was developed prior to that, but this was now tested in action on the battlefield. Also think about what type of intel did Iran get for helping Russia and sponsoring it and helping it with Shahed drones, right? Shahed drones that were the first generation, so to speak, are nowhere near as enhanced and as capable as the current ones. Of course, it becomes better and becomes cheaper as well, and you can mass produce it. Now, think about also China, right? China is getting intel from Russia and also specifically from anything they capture from Ukrainians, right? Any US equipment essentially that ends up being in China, dissected, analyzed, and copied, right? Then think about the nuclear capabilities, but also, the intel for it that is needed, that ended up in Iranian hands just because they sponsoring and helping Russia in their invasion of Ukraine. So this war did help several good players and bad players, right? Or, the evil and the good. So, 10% for Trump's script, right? And that's my question too. Like with the tariffs, we never question, or we do question, but we never get answers as to where does this money go? right? From the tariffs, from the markup on military equipment. Don't tell us this is how we return money that we gave Ukraine, because we never gave money to Ukraine. We allocated money to replace old equipment with new equipment that was in U.S. hands, right? In America's hands. So that's if you do have any type of knowledge or analytical skills or just common sense, plainly, you would be questioning it, right? But we don't. um, and then of course in the newsletter I put some national news, like Trump talking about Smithsonian and saying that slavery wasn't too bad, but Smithsonian spent so much time talking about slavery being bad, but let's talk about it as the source of progress, which is obnoxious. And I mean, are we this low that we have to discuss slavery, that whether it was good or bad? Like, is this where we at? I mean, next we're going to talk about concentration camps, that what the gas chambers were warming up people, actually. I mean, they died, but they were warm. Is that where we at? Like, this is just obnoxious. At some point you have to say stop. Like, it just, what is it? Where is Congress? Where are doctors? I mean, you still need Congress for it, right? To rule against whatever he tries to do? Or is everything now ruled by executive orders that are, most of them are illegal to begin with? Ending the voting by mail through executive orders. This is just something bogus. So are we going to have any confrontation in Congress? So using is to extract money and power, but elite universities and other universities are not expecting many international students this year, because some of them are still waiting on their visa appointments, and most of them who got visa appointments and visas are just scared to come here. So universities will have a struggle, right? And also I see, for instance, in New York, we have so little youth, or you always could see students arriving and they would rent apartments, and you have the feeling of sort of international community, which is very much negatively affected at this point. And also in the newsletter I put more about Hurricane Erin, and for instance in New York the beaches are closed today and tomorrow, so there will be deadly currents, as they promise. So be vigilant if that affects you in any way. The hurricane is not making a landfall, but still be careful if you are on the East Coast. All right. Okay. And then I put some, just going through the newsletter that is essentially ready, some news, of course, from the some global news, right? In North Korea and China, India, they're warming up in their relationship, so you will get a pretty good readout. I tend to keep everything short, so I will send this in within 30 minutes, so you can take a look and have a readout. And this week I will go live at 5 p.m. I've heard you 12 p.m. was very early. For Europeans, it was 6 p.m. and most of folks work still at that time. For US, it was like not lunchtime, kind of weird. West Coast, 9 a.m. was weird. So let's try for 5 p.m. Let's see how this works. And if you missed this and you watch it on demand, thank you so much. You can watch it anytime throughout the evening or night. And then I will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. So let's see how this timing works. If this doesn't, then we'll adjust to make sure that you get the latest news. Okay? So get the newsletter. It's free. Onestnetwork.com. Newsletters we use Substack to send it out. It's just easier. And then the separate articles are on the site as well. So see you tomorrow. Again, keep your head on a swivel. If news makes you anxious, shut it off. Shut it down. Watch whatever floats your boat, cooking shows, reality, whatever, right? If you don't like watching this and being part of this fear mongering, whatever programming that you are imposed to all the time, right? Be careful. All right. Take care of you. It's a marathon. So thank you for being here. Have a good night. And I will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern.